Hello and welcome to Maths by SAS. This is my basic and introductory lesson about the graphs of different types of functions. In this lesson, students, we're not going to discuss that how to draw the graphs of different types of functions and what are the requirements for the drawings of graphs. Here I will be discussing with you that when you will be drawing the graphs of different types of functions, what type of the diagram and the sketch you will be getting, because this is one of the really important concepts of your O-level examination. That in paper 1 the question comes that you have to identify that what type of graph is this. As my children are familiar with the graph of quadratic and linear functions, so I have started my lesson with the cubic function. It's really important to understand that what is the cubic function. The general form of the cubic function is y equals to ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d, where a, b, c and d are the real numbers and a, which is the coefficient of the term having power 3, should not be equal to 0. This is really important to understand. Why this should not be equal to 0? Because if the coefficient of the cubic term is 0, then this whole factor will vanish and we will have no more cubic function. That will become the quadratic function. And when you will be drawing the graph of cubic function, the formation that you will be getting will be like two parabolas joined together. If we compare this part of the graph till this part, we can see this is similar to this part of the curve, and which is the parabolic curve, and this one is similar to this part. So for cubic function, my students, how you will be keeping their sketch in your mind, that they will be somehow two parabolas joined together. So when you are drawing the graph of cubic function and you are not finding this feature in your graph, it means that there is some problem with your either the table values or the plotting of points. So you have to recheck the table values and the points with that you have plotted so that you can get this trend. Coming to the quadratic function, what is quadratic function? The general form of the quadratic function is y equals to ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, c are the real numbers and again a should not be equal to 0. Why a should not be equal to 0? A is the coefficient of square term. If we make this 0, we will have no more the quadratic expression, power 2 variable with us, so my function will become linear. So for the quadratic function, it's really important that the coefficient of the square term must be non-zero. So it's really important for the quadratic graph and quadratic function that the coefficient of the square term should not be equal to 0. Now there can be two types of the situation coming to you. Either your graph, the name of the quadratic graph is the parabola, and parabola can have the opening upward or parabola can have opening downward. And how will you find it out, and how will you decide whether your graph will have the opening upward or downward? You have to see the sign of the coefficient of the square term. If the sign of the coefficient of the square term is positive, that is a is greater than 0, then your curve will have the opening upward and you will have minimum turning point. And same when the coefficient of x square is negative, then your parabola will have the opening downward. Then your U-shaped curve will have opening downward, and in this case you will have the maximum turning point. Coming to the linear graphs, the general form of the linear function is y equals to ax plus b, where a and b are the real numbers, and again a, which is the coefficient of the term having power 1, should not be equal to 0. The general graphs of y equals to mx plus c form will be a straight line. Here in this diagram, your line is passing through origin, and as the line is passing through origin, this graph is not meeting any point on y-axis, so it will have no y-intercept, no c. And let's talk about the gradient of such types of lines which are in the first and third quadrant. they have the rising trend, and their gradient will always be positive. Coming to the second situation, that when A is negative, in that case your lines will have the falling trend and they will be in the second and fourth quadrant. So these are the important observations, that whenever your straight line is passing through origin, it will have no C with us. And then the second thing that we have to understand is that as the line is in the second and fourth quadrant, we have to say that the line has the falling trend, and in case of the falling trend, gradient will have the negative sign. This is really important, and this will be helpful while you will be calculating the tangent and the gradient of the tangent. So I hope students you are clear about the sketches of linear, quadratic and cubic graphs, and when you will be solving your questions while your practice work and for your O-level examination, you will be keeping these points in your mind, that for the linear graph your graph will be the straight line. For the quadratic graph, your graph will be a U-shaped curve. Its name is parabola, and it will have opening upward or downward, and that will depend upon the sign of the coefficient of the square term. If the coefficient of the square term is positive, then the parabola will have the opening upward with the minimum point, and if the coefficient of x square is negative, then the parabola will have opening downward with the maximum turning point. And coming to the cubic curve, in case of cubic curve, you can take it in the mind that this will be somehow two parabolas, one opening upward and one opening downward, joined together. Okay, I hope you are clear about today's class. For next difficulty level, please catch me in the next class, and do not miss the next class, because in the next class I will be telling you about the sketches of some further graphs. Please watch my lessons, like, share and subscribe the channel, and press bell icon to get the notification of every lesson in time. Thank you very much.